Every lawyer loves to follow two presentations about men and their sausage. You can see why being a city attorney can be potentially a challenge. My name is Kalei Taylor. I'm a deputy city attorney for the city of Portland. I primarily work for the Bureau of Technology Services, and I'm not that tall. The work I do primarily involves anything technology related. Software licensing, social media, all these things. I met Ms. Bledsoe at a conference with Northwest Regional Managers Association, and I think that's where she got the title for this presentation. Because how to be your lawyer's best friend just cracked me up. I'm like, that is so cute, because you all know we went to law school to make friends, right? That adversarial relationship just makes, for great friends. But what she probably did was pick up on something I said at that conference about social media really is going to involve a lot more interaction with your in-house counsel than it has in the past. Each media type has different ways of communicating, coming in and out. Lawyers are generally pretty comfortable with the megaphone style, shouting it out. It's that getting information back and having your mayor called various things that become more problematic. So what can I tell you in 10 minutes? I'm assuming everybody here, or almost everybody here, works in government. Is that correct? No? Not everybody? Okay. For those of you that are in government, you've got some additional issues. Social media covers almost every possible area of law you can think of. It's going to touch on advertising, bankruptcy, constitutional law, criminal law. There have been issues with criminal stalking. Somebody had a restraining order violated because they poked somebody on Facebook, got themselves hauled back into court. Note to self, if you put a restraining order against somebody, why are you still friends with them on Facebook? I'm just saying. So there are numerous employment law issues. If you have union contracts, is tweeting going to be part of their job? Are they going to get paid to tweet after hours? You've got issues with genetic information non-disclosure. If you're using it for employment law pre-screening, you can't unsee things. So if you see somebody who's from a protected class, if they are in a wheelchair, if you see that they are a smoker versus a non-smoker, all these things you can't unsee. Little tip, if you're hiring, have somebody else do the looking. The person who makes the decision should only be given that information from the person so that only the acceptable information is given to the decision maker. You don't want to have that come back to bite you later. All kinds of online torts, defamation, intentional infliction of emotional distress. We've heard about people making false profiles and children committing suicide based on very cruel and mean things people have done. And then you layer on top of that government. Government on top of the issues that everybody else has with authentication and making sure that your constituents know who you are, that your branding is protected through a trademark, a copyright. There's all kinds of issues that government has, such as if you're going to go out and make your agency's social media page, it's a contract. No, it's not free. No, you can't just click to agree. Everybody says, oh, but it's okay, there's no money, it's not a contract. And your lawyer says, really? Did you just commit us to indemnification? And are we now going to be litigating in a foreign jurisdiction? It's a contract and it's binding. So one, if you are in a government agency, make sure you have the authority to be representing your agency. Two, this is where your lawyer can come in handy. If you came to me and said, hey, I would like to do some photo sharing, and I've picked these 3 sites, PhotoBucket, Flickr, Kodak. All things being equal to you, you could bring that to me, and I would say, okay, here's these 3 possible products. Your choice of law in one is in Canada, the other one's in North Dakota, the other one's in Maui. We're gonna go with the one in Maui. So, but the lawyers will look at that and see, how are the privacy terms listed? Are we gonna be litigating in our own home state? Or if we're gonna get litigated in some other jurisdiction, is anyone in your office licensed to practice there, or are you gonna be paying for outside counsel in North Dakota? So talk about being your lawyer's best friend, that's really critical. We want to be able to litigate in our hometown, in our home jurisdiction. If we're not, there will be another word that may begin with F, and it's not going to be friend. So, now, additionally, government's going to have issues with First Amendment free speech. Government is not allowed to engage in content-based discrimination, and we can't censor people. So in addition to your host's terms of use, you also may want to add your own terms of use that say, this is going to be family-friendly, age-appropriate, all ages inclusive, no profanity, no harassment, no racial slurs. This will help prevent things like, the liquor stores, the cigarette stores, the adult bookstores, and places where you really don't want that on your social media site because you want it to be all inclusive for everybody. However, as you've seen, sometimes people say really naughty things on Twitter, and having the best policy in the world is irrelevant if you don't enforce it. And if you only enforce it sometimes, you have another constitutional issue. You can't be doing specific enforcement. So if a whole bunch of people call Sam really naughty words, and then you do it, and you do it, but then one day that one guy that keeps constantly sending you that public record request that really annoys you, he says it, and you delete his posts only, then you're gonna have an issue with specific enforcement. So there are a lot more things with government and government speech, and you wanna have a limited public forum in order to do that. One of the most basic tips I can give you, and this applies to government and non-government people, is I highly recommend that you separate personal and professional accounts. Particularly for those of us in government, because some of us have additional restrictions on when we can advertise, how we can advertise. Government can't spend taxpayer money to support and endorse certain bills. So if you're using your one account during the day for work, and then on the weekend you're saying support measure whatever, is it your personal account? Is it your work account? Is it gonna get you in trouble? Is it gonna be a violation? Are the taxpayers gonna come after you and say, that wasn't okay? And it may not matter if it's on a work phone, a private phone, and all of this stuff, of course, at the end of the day, including the douche comment, is a public record. I don't know what the archiving requirement is for that, but it is a public record. And so that has to be saved and preserved. So these are all the various issues that we're gonna have to work through, as well as your record retention and making sure that everybody understands how to preserve the information, how to make sure it's out there, and to engage in your constituents. So I know I've only got a few minutes left, so if anybody has any particular questions, I'd be happy to answer them for you. Yes, ma'am? Well, when you work in the city attorney's office, you do have to have a sense of humor about things. One of my current amusing things is that I thought, as a new young attorney at the city's office, that I was going to be, so proactive, and I started creating the city's social media policy back in April of 2009. And little did I know that it was going to take, what are we at now? A little over 2 years for it to wend its way through the process and for it to get out. And I've had to go to bureau directors meetings and vet it and vet it and vet it. In the meantime, I'm like, by the way, nobody's waiting for this policy. They're all tweeting and Facebooking and things are going on and we have no policy about this. But what's really nice is many of you who I may have met on email have asked for my policy. So I believe every other jurisdiction has implemented the policy that I drafted. So yay, so thank you to those of you who actually used it. So yes, hopefully it will be coming soon to City of Portland. But and I have to say this delicately, but social media really highlights generational issues. The young folks coming into the city who are your information officers, this is like breathing. It's like breathing, it's like walking. You just do this. Whereas some of the more seasoned individuals think that any time spent on the computer is cyber slacking, cyber lounging, and it's a complete waste of time, and why in God's name are you doing this? So even trying to draft a policy for this is very challenging because you've got people at different ends of the spectrum. Either everybody's gonna be miserable, or this thing's never gonna go and get out there. So yeah, it is a bit of a challenge to work with this, and each agency has comfort levels, and they have different tolerance for risk, and that's why being your lawyer's best friend is going to be helpful to you because you'll be able to talk to them. They'll be able to find out, what's your tolerance for risk? Do you want no tolerance for risk? Well, great, then you're not going to be interacting on social media, and if you're not interacting on social media, you're not social, and that's just lame. That's a web page. So don't go out there and do social media just because you think it's the thing to do and then just be like radio silent. But at the same time, your lawyer wants to say, yeah, let's try and get as close to home as we can. Let's try and get in the Ninth Circuit at least if we have a choice. Let's try and educate people about, just because somebody says something mean doesn't mean you can delete it because that's a free speech violation. So having that, communication and making it a little more informal and making it more comfortable for both, you and your lawyer, I think will make a really big difference and help you use social media intelligently. It's a tool like any other tool. It can be used to do really great things, or you can really screw something up. So that partnership, I think, is going to become more important as we continue to go down this road. So thank you very much for your time.